At 28, I learned that a person can be surrounded by family and still feel completely alone. The doctor's office smelled like disinfectant and cold air. I remember staring at the little plastic model of a human body on the shelf while the doctor carefully explained what the scans had shown. I remember the way his voice became softer when he said the words I had been trying not to hear. "Camille, it's stage 3 cancer." For a few seconds, everything inside me went silent. I didn't cry. I didn't ask how long I had. I didn't even ask why. I just stared at him and nodded, as if he had told me I needed antibiotics. But when I stepped outside the hospital, my hands started shaking. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes before I finally called my parents. My mother answered first. "Camille, honey, what happened?" The moment I heard her voice, the wall I had built around myself collapsed. "Mom!" I could barely speak. "I went to the doctor today." "What did he say?" I swallowed hard. "They found cancer." There was silence. Then my mother gasped. "Oh, God." "I have to start treatment soon. They said it's stage 3. I expected her to tell me she was coming. I expected my father to get on the phone. I expected someone to say, "You're not doing this alone." Instead, after a few seconds, my mother whispered, "What are we going to do?" I thought she meant it emotionally. I didn't realize she meant it practically. Then I heard my father in the background. "What's wrong?" my mother told him. Another silence followed. Then my father said something that would stay inside my head for the next 2 years. "We can't deal with this right now. Your sister is planning her wedding." I thought I had heard him wrong. "Dad?" He sighed. "Camille, your sister's wedding is in 6 weeks. There's already so much happening. We just can't drop everything." I pressed my hand against my mouth. "I'm your daughter." "I know that." "I have cancer." "We know." "I'm scared." My father didn't answer. I waited. Finally he said, "You need to be strong." That night, I drove home alone. I sat on the floor of my apartment, still wearing my hospital clothes, and cried until my chest hurt. I had always believed my parents were my safety net. I was wrong. My younger sister, Allison, had always been the center of their world. She was beautiful, confident, and effortlessly charming. My parents called her their little princess, even though she was 25. When Allison wanted something, my parents found a way to give it to her. When I wanted something, they told me to be independent. I never complained. I thought that was what older daughters were supposed to do. So when I got sick, I tried to understand them. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they didn't know how to handle it. Maybe they needed time. I made excuses for them because accepting the truth was too painful. The next morning I started treatment. The first chemotherapy session was terrifying. I remember sitting in that chair with an IV in my arm, watching clear liquid slowly drip into my body. The nurse kept asking if I was okay. I kept saying yes. I wasn't. My hair began falling out weeks later. First it was a few strands on my pillow, then handfuls in the shower. One morning, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and ran my fingers through my hair. A thick section came away in my hand. I stared at it. Then I sat on the floor and cried. That was the day I shaved my head. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't want to bother them. Allison's wedding was approaching. My mother was busy with dresses, flowers, invitations, and seating arrangements. My father was busy paying for the venue. I was busy trying to survive. The difference was painful. 3 days before Allison's wedding, I called my mother. "Mom, could you come with me to my next treatment?" There was a long pause. "What day?" "Saturday." "That's the rehearsal dinner." "Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Could you ask someone else?" Someone else. Those 2 words broke something inside me. I had no one else. But I said, "Sure." She didn't ask how I was feeling. She didn't ask if I needed anything. She simply said, "I love you." Then she hung up. I went to the rehearsal dinner alone, not as a guest. I wasn't invited. I found out later that my parents had told relatives I was taking some time for myself. The truth was uglier. They were afraid my illness would make the wedding emotional. They wanted perfect photographs. They wanted smiling faces. They didn't want a bald, exhausted daughter reminding everyone that life could fall apart without warning. So I disappeared from the wedding, and my sister got the perfect day. The day after her wedding, I received a photograph from my mother. Allison was standing beneath a wall of white flowers, smiling in her wedding dress. Under the picture, my mother wrote, "She looked like a princess." I stared at the message for a long time, then I typed, "She did." I didn't tell her that I had been vomiting alone in my apartment while she was dancing at the reception. I didn't tell her that I had spent the night before the wedding crying, because I was terrified I might not live long enough to see another Christmas. I didn't tell her that I had started wondering whether my own family would even miss me if I died. I kept everything inside, because somewhere deep down, I was still hoping they would come back. They never did. The months that followed were brutal. There were days when I couldn't get out of bed. There were nights when pain kept me awake until sunrise. My body became weaker, my face became thinner, my hair was gone. But something else was changing too. I was becoming emotionally stronger. I started keeping a journal. Every day I wrote down one reason to keep fighting. Some days it was my cat. Some days it was my favorite song. Some days it was simply the thought that I deserved to see what happened after the worst chapter of my life. And eventually I stopped waiting for my parents. I learned to drive myself to appointments. I learned how to cook when I was exhausted. I learned how to ask neighbors for help. I learned that strangers could sometimes show more kindness than people who shared your blood. A nurse named Rachel became one of the most important people in my life. She never treated me like a burden. Whenever I came in, she would smile and say, "Good morning, fighter." One day I asked her why she called me that. She said, "Because you keep showing up." Those words stayed with me. I kept showing up, again and again, month after month. Until one morning, almost 2 years after my diagnosis, the doctor walked into the room holding my latest scans. He smiled. "Camille, I have good news." I stared at him. "The scans are clear." I didn't understand at first. He repeated it. "You're cancer-free." I covered my face with both hands, and for the first time in 2 years, I cried tears that weren't caused by fear. I laughed. I cried. I thanked God. I hugged Rachel. Then I walked outside into the sunlight. The world looked different. The same streets, the same buildings, the same cars. But I was different. I had survived something that almost destroyed me, and I had finally accepted something even harder. My parents had chosen not to be there. I could forgive them. But I would never again depend on them. I rebuilt my life slowly. I grew my hair back. I returned to work. I started exercising. I traveled. I began volunteering at the same cancer center where I had received treatment. Eventually, I started a small support program for patients who had no family nearby. I remembered what it felt like to sit alone in a hospital chair, so I wanted other people to know they weren't invisible. One afternoon, I was sitting in the center's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my father. I hadn't spoken to him in months. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me said I should. "Hello?" His voice sounded different, older, weaker. "Camille." "Yes." There was silence. Then he started crying. My father had never cried in front of me, not once. "Dad, I need you." Those 3 words almost broke me. For a moment, I was 28 again, sitting on my apartment floor, bald, terrified, calling my father and begging him to come. Then I remembered his answer. "We can't deal with this right now." I said nothing. He continued, "I'm sick." "What happened?" "My health has gotten worse. Your mother can't take care of me anymore." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry." "I need a caregiver." I knew where this was going. I need someone I can trust. My father began crying harder. "Camille, you're my daughter." I looked around the cancer center. There were patients sitting beside their loved ones, mothers holding their children's hands, husbands bringing coffee to their wives, fathers helping daughters walk. And suddenly I realized something. My father wasn't calling because he had finally understood what he had done. He was calling because he needed something. "You have Allison," I said. "She's busy." "Of course." I almost laughed. The same sentence, the same pattern. When I needed them, Allison was busy. Now they needed me, and Allison was busy. "Where is Mom?" "She's tired." "And Allison? She has her own family now." I stared at the floor. Then my father said something that shocked me. "I always knew you were the strong one." I felt a cold pain in my chest. The strong one. That was what people called you when they wanted to avoid helping you. I took a breath. Dad, do you remember the day I told you I had cancer? He didn't answer. I called you crying. I remember. I told you I was scared. His voice became quieter. Yes. And you told me you couldn't deal with it because Allison was planning her wedding. I was wrong. I closed my eyes. Yes, I whispered. I'm sorry. I wanted those words for 2 years, but now that I finally heard them, they didn't feel like enough. My father asked, "Will you come take care of me?" I looked out the window. I could have said yes, I could have rushed to his house, I could have become the daughter he suddenly remembered. But revenge isn't always about hurting someone. Sometimes revenge is simply refusing to become the person they thought they could use. I spoke slowly. I can help you find a professional caregiver. My father started crying. No, Camille, I want you. I swallowed. You wanted Allison when I needed a family. Please. I could hear his voice breaking. I'm your father, and I was your daughter. Silence. Then he whispered, I know. I looked at the clock. I knew exactly what I needed to say. The words came out quietly. You chose her, Dad. 4 words. That was all. My father stopped speaking. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. Then the call ended. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. The next morning, my mother came to my apartment. She looked exhausted. She stood outside my door with tears in her eyes. Can I come in? I hesitated. Then I opened the door. She walked inside and looked around. She noticed the photographs on my wall, pictures of me hiking, me volunteering, me smiling with people from the cancer center. She stared at one photograph for a long time. You look happy. I am. She nodded slowly. We didn't know. I almost laughed. You knew. She looked down. You knew I was sick. I mean, we didn't know how bad it was. You didn't ask. She started crying. I was afraid. So was I. She wiped her face. I thought you were going to die. I thought I was going to die too. She covered her mouth. I should have been there. Yes. I should have taken you to treatment. Yes. I should have held your hand. Yes. Each answer hurt, but I refused to make them easier. She whispered, Can you forgive me? I sat down. I already did. She looked surprised. Then why won't you help your father? Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. She began crying again. I don't understand. I looked directly into her eyes. When I was sick, I needed parents. I didn't need perfect parents. I didn't need money. I didn't need expensive gifts. I needed someone to sit beside me when I was scared. My mother lowered her head. You weren't there. I know. And now Dad needs someone. I know. You want me to abandon him? No. She looked up. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I won't abandon myself again. Those words changed something in her face. For the first time, she seemed to understand. I helped them find a professional caregiver. I arranged appointments. I gave them the information they needed. But I did not move back home. I did not become my father's nurse. I did not sacrifice the life I had fought so hard to rebuild. A month later, my father called me again. His voice was calmer. I understand now. What do you understand? You were never asking us to save you. I said nothing. You just wanted us to show up. My eyes filled with tears. Yes. I thought money could fix everything. You were wrong. I thought Allison needed us more. You were wrong. He took a shaky breath. I spent 2 years pretending I was a good father. I whispered, Why? Because admitting what I did meant admitting I failed you. I closed my eyes. And now? Now I know I failed you. That was the first honest thing my father had said in years. He didn't ask me to forgive him again. He didn't ask me to come take care of him. He simply said, I'm proud of you. I looked at the ceiling. Thank you. Then he said something I never expected. Your story changed my life. I smiled sadly. My story almost ended, but it didn't? No. You survived? Yes. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. I realized something that day. For 2 years, I had thought my greatest victory would be making my parents regret abandoning me. But I was wrong. My greatest revenge was living a life they could no longer control. I didn't need them to suffer. I didn't need Allison's marriage to fail. I didn't need my father to beg forever. I didn't need an apology big enough to erase the past. I just needed to stop measuring my worth by how much my family loved me, because I had spent years believing that being abandoned meant I wasn't worth staying for. Cancer taught me something different. Sometimes people leave because they are selfish. Sometimes people fail you because they are afraid. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you the most, but their choices do not define your value. I had survived cancer. I had survived loneliness. I had survived the heartbreak of discovering that my own parents could walk away when I needed them most. And eventually, I realized I had survived something even more important. I had survived the need for their approval. A year later, I stood in front of a small group of cancer patients at the center. Some were newly diagnosed. Some were halfway through treatment. Some had families beside them. Some were completely alone. I looked at them and remembered the girl I used to be, the girl sitting alone in a hospital chair, the girl staring at a phone, hoping her parents would call, the girl who believed she had to be strong because nobody else would be. I smiled at them. You don't have to pretend you're okay, I told them. You're allowed to be scared, you're allowed to cry, and you're allowed to ask for help. Then I paused. But if someone refuses to show up for you, remember this. The room became silent. Their absence is not proof that you are unworthy of love. I looked toward the window. Sunlight filled the room, and for the first time, I didn't think about what my parents had taken from me. I thought about everything I had gained, my life, my strength, my freedom, my purpose, and the ability to look at the darkest chapter of my life and say, without anger and without shame, I survived. My parents abandoned me when I needed them most, but they could never take away the life I built after they left. And perhaps that was the greatest revenge of all.